Okay, we are now calling this meeting to order on February 7th, 2022. And I see everybody is present. We will have a motion for the consent calendar.
Move to approve the consent calendar, including the minutes from the December 6, 2021 Select Board meeting and gifts from the Concord Building Design Center, formerly Concord Lumber, in the amount of $2,269.85 to the Concord Fire Department, and from Alice Scott in the amount of $2,500 to the Concord Police Department.
Second. Okay, thank you very much for those donations. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay,
And thank you for the gifts to the town.
yes, thank you very much. And we're on to the town manager's report.
Good evening. Just a couple of items to report on to you this evening. The main library will be closed on Wednesday, February 9th through Friday, the 18th. There's some additional renovation work that's going on. Specifically, shelving is being finally has arrived and is going to be installed. When the main library reopens on Saturday, February 19th, the children's library and the connecting corridor will then be closed for some additional work in the library, in the children's library. The Fowler branch will be open during this time, and all of the staff will be working, and we will be routing all material distribution through the Fowler. There will be a power outage, a planned power outage scheduled for this Thursday, February 10th in the early morning along sections of Commonwealth Ave and Bradford Street. The outage will allow line crews to safely upgrade underground electric facilities located at the intersection of Commonwealth Ave and Bradford Street to facilitate upgrades for the properties located at 104 to 108 Commonwealth Ave. I wanted to advise you that last week we received notice that the town was awarded a $100,000 grant from the Green Communities Program. This grant project will fund the replacement of the heat pumps at 4 of the Ripley pods. We had 3 firefighters over the weekend, or actually last week, become certified in ice dive training and rescue at Walden Pond. The Board of Health confirmed its mask mandate at their last meeting at the end of January. Their next meeting is not until the end of February, at which time they'll be taking up the mask mandate again, and hopefully our average daily incident rate will be low enough to be able to remove the mask mandate. We did receive a request for a waiver from the Concord players, and unfortunately at this time, the cases are too high to grant the waiver, but we do review the number of cases each Wednesday with the Board of Health Director, and I'm hoping that the case count will be low enough this Wednesday that we'll be able to grant the waiver so that their productions, their upcoming productions, can be the actors without wearing masks. And that is the end of the report.
Thank you very much. A lot of good news from that report. I didn't even realize we had an ice diving team. That is really amazing. And the de-escalation techniques that the police department are using, that is excellent. And the grant, congratulations. Are there questions from the board? Linda.
I too noted the ice diving team and the training that they were getting. Made me cold just thinking about it. I do have a commendation to the police department for the training they're doing and the accreditation they're working on. But I did have a question as a result of the report, and that is, it specifically mentioned that there was no situation in January that required a force response. And I guess that begged the question for me about typically what are we dealing with in terms of reactions that required force response, how often, and if they could just give a general category. that would be helpful. I know you won't have that response tonight.
Yeah,
but-
no, I won't have that response tonight. We certainly can do that. One of the items that I've talked to the chair about is having some of the SMT members or division managers come in periodically where you have spots open on your agenda to talk about maybe updates on their department or division, or just if they have a particular initiative that they'd like to shed some light on. And so we're working to schedule those, and we certainly can have the police chief in to talk about the accreditation process and then just talk about some of the statistics as well.
Terrific.
There's been a lot of recent discussion about de-escalation as a science, actually, in policing. I wonder, does the police department actually have a publication or a policy or a standard that would be, I think it would be informative if we could see a copy of what their policy was and see how it compared with initiatives in other municipalities.
Sure, and the police chief would be the best person to come in and talk about. That is part of the accreditation process, is documenting policies and procedures. That's just one phase of it, and I know he would be happy to come in to talk to you about that.
On another item in the report, you mentioned the survey on Junction Park, and I think that has been completed, has it not?
That I do not know off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to check.
Would be interesting to know what, I think that was a town-wide online survey.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the public meeting's later this week.
Hmm?
The public meeting's scheduled later this week, so
I think
assume-
it's
It is?
February 16th.
Oh, they got moved to late 1 week, so
Yeah, I
There-
just got a
another
email,
request.
another request just
So
a
I don't
couple
think it's
days ago.
closed yet.
Right.
Okay, and I think we had a couple of public hearings. I don't know if these have been reported on yet. The hearing on the Thoreau Street plan and the Scenic Highways. I know that there was an interesting hearing on scenic, on the, not sure what committee that was, but there was a lot of response, public response to the Scenic Highways proposal, mostly from people on Balls Hill Road and Barrett's Mill Road, where I think most of the comment was negative from the public. And I think we had a very large hearing on the Thoreau Street plan. A lot of
300
people appeared.
Yes.
And again, I think much of the comment was negative rather than positive. I had nothing else on the report. Thank you.
Okay, Linda?
I just have another comment, I guess, on the, something that was in the town manager's report regarding PEG operations. And, you know, they certainly, and the media have certainly done a wonderful job adapting to some of the hybrid meeting needs that we've had and all kinds of other technology. I guess my concern is that there are many meetings that are not posted and you're unable to access. And I know from time, you know, we have a significant delay sometimes with minutes. And I remember Matt recently mentioned saying, well, we always have the recording in the meantime. So if the departments and the staff for the various committees are not posting and we don't know how to access them, it becomes problematic. And particularly right now when there's so much happening, and sometimes we need to know what happened in one meeting to expedite something that's coming up next. So I don't know but my applause to all that the department is doing, and if there's any way we can just tackle this piece of it, it would be helpful.
Just for clarification, Linda, when you're saying the meeting's not posted, if the meeting's posted on the
Sorry.
calendar, so you're talking about the video.
The
after.
recording,
Just wanted to
recording.
make sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and there is a process, so those recordings come to the Zoom administrator, whoever is the Zoom administrator for that meeting, and then it needs to be transferred to Minuteman Media Network, and they post. So there often is a little bit of a lag, and we will definitely work on that to make sure that happens quicker than it's been happening in the past.
Thank you.
We did get I don't know where this came from, we did get a spreadsheet of vacancies in town positions.
Yes.
I think that was last week. And I
The
think,
interim town manager provided that, yes.
and I think that was an area in which there was a significant number of vacancies that needed to be filled. Is that right in the,
So that report, I can't remember the number of positions, but I know the percent was about 8.5% vacancy. I would say that that has been a pretty common percent vacancy rate for a number of years. There are some vacancies that are more critical to fill than others. And this is a new report that we're preparing, and we are going to update that at least on a quarterly basis and share that with the select board so you can see, and we'll start developing some trends. But recruitment is definitely, it's definitely much more difficult than it has been in the past, and it's particularly difficult in certain areas.
Appreciate that. I think it's really important for us to watch those trends. So having that report is really great. Thank you. And just before we get to Matt, a very quick question. Who is the Zoom administrator tonight for this meeting? And the reason I ask is I had a request for public comment on a particular item coming up, and I'm not sure how we're handling that.
Chris. So
Chris.
Chris Carmody is the Zoom administrator tonight.
Okay, all right, because we can't see the Zoom screen, so, okay.
This is the Zoom screen. As soon as someone joins, you'll see it here.
Oh, so nobody is watching from home right now.
Not with a screen on.
Got it. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Mark.
Popularity is waning.
They got burned out at the caucus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Matt, you had some questions?
Yeah, so I was noting the item on the Assabet River pedestrian bridge, and it sounds like, there's this application for a grant for $300,000. There's already CPC funds for $300,000, and then there's going to be another $110,000 requested from capital improvement. So that, in my math, says $710,000. We also had a $135,000 grant last year on this project, I believe. And so, I believe there was even spending before that. So I think we're getting close to spending about $1 million to get this thing through permitting. And I looked back at 2019 report, and it was estimating 250,000. So this project, the last time I heard, I thought it was going to be 400,000 to get it through permitting, and now it's 700,000. So I'm really concerned. Again, I'm massively in favor of pedestrian infrastructure, but this is a strikingly expensive project, it seems to me.
The river is getting wider with the rising water level.
It must be. Anyway, I just wanted to ask, is there concern about this? What's the new estimate of the total project cost, sources of funding, all of that? Because it seems like every time I look, it's a bigger number than it was the last time.
Sure. So we can prepare something for next week's meeting. Marcia Rasmussen, if she was here, she could answer all of that. She's joining the meeting later this evening. She's on another call right now. So I think probably the best thing, because it's not listed on the agenda, that we'll just prepare something and bring it up next week.
That would be great.
Yeah, it's not an instant, like, this is not going away this
Yeah,
week.
yeah.
It's.
That would be really great. Okay.
I just wanted to say something about the Scenic Byways, but that Henry had mentioned. I think it's the Historical Commission is sponsoring that, and it applies to the public, the town right of way on these roads. It doesn't impact anyone's private property in any way. So, and that's seemed to be
I think that's one of the
point of
concerns. That
confusion.
was one of the concerns of the people who lived on, well, there's two
Okay.
concerns.
But,
of Ball
but
Hill
we're
Road.
not going to debate that issue tonight. It will be on the town warrant, and we're going to be having public hearings to go over each one of these articles.
I do have one more point that I would love to see in a future discussion, is that I saw the announcement that the state has issued its regulations about how the zoning near public transit needs to be defined. And I also saw Town Planner Elizabeth Hughes' remarks on that. It seems that there is more that we, even on the select board, need to do beyond just what the planning board needs to do on this issue. So just because, I mean, from a policy perspective, it's really broad, okay? For example, you know, you need to define an area that's going to accommodate, I think, 1,100 units, minimum of 50 acres. And, you know, it's really potentially got a very big impact on the town. And some of the ways that you are supposed to come to the conclusion of how you draw your new zones, I think, you know, involve the town budget and projects that may be beyond the scope of the planning board. So I just wanted to at least put that on the table.
Okay, thank you. We will discuss that. All right. Any other questions for the town manager? All right, seeing none, I have some very brief chair's remarks. The legislature is also working to extend Zoom and hybrid open meetings. So the original deadline was April 1st. Now they're moving it to July 15th. So we can continue at least until July 15th. It looks like this bill is going to pass. It's passed both the Senate and the House. Also, the town manager's reports are very comprehensive, and I want to ask everybody on the board, when we do our liaison reports, we don't need to repeat something that's already in the town manager's report. We just need to report if there's something very significant that the rest of the board needs to pay attention to. Okay, and public hearings for the annual town meeting begin on February 28th, and then there are 4 more dates in March. Everybody will be able to attend either live or by Zoom. The live meetings will be in the same room where we had the caucus, the large meeting room in the townhouse. We have a new sound system coming that we tried out in December, and it worked really well. So we're looking forward to that. And finally, okay, wait a minute, I forgot to say, so on February 28th, which is our first public hearing, the select board runs that hearing, and then we will continue after that meeting, come back in this room and have a brief select board meeting that night. So finally, I wanted to say that next week, February 14th, we were going to have a focused meeting, but instead we're going to have a regular business meeting just because we have a lot going on in February. We will talk about code of conduct, but it will be one regular size agenda item instead of a whole focus meeting. So that's it for my remarks. And at this time, we are going to have a public hearing on Comcast. Is anybody here tonight from Comcast?
Yes, hello. My name's Greg Franks.
Okay, good to see you, Greg. Let us just go into, we'll have a motion to enter the public hearing.
Move to open the public hearing for the grant of location petition from Comcast of Massachusetts 3 Incorporated to install aerial coaxial cable from utility pole 38 to utility pole 43 near 516 Monument Street.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Thank you for being with us. Greg.
Thank you for making time for me tonight. So I'm here on our petition to for a grant of location to bring service to 516 Monument Street. And as you can see from the plan that we filed, it involves bringing aerial cable from pole 38 to pole 33 along Monument Street. I've had a chance to review the memorandum from the engineering division. And of course, we're prepared to comply fully with these conditions.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Franks on the board? Seeing none.
I just wanted to make an observation that, here we're approaching the Concord 2025 celebration. And, Monument Street, this stretch of Monument Street is between Old North Bridge and the town center. And it's a very scenic area of road. And it's one where I think ideally we would not have overhead utilities. And I know that I'm a broken record on this issue, but we have a town policy that's supposed to underground these things. And I understand, I don't want to put Mr. Franks on the spot here. We're just adding one more line to an existing set of poles, but we should take every opportunity, especially along a stretch of road like this, to find a way to bury the infrastructure, not just for aesthetics, but also for longer term maintenance costs and the continuity of service.
That's a very good point. Who is the CMLP liaison? Henry, are you the CMLP liaison?
Actually, I am.
You are. Good. All right, Matt, then you get to bring this
Well,
message
it's
back.
Public Works, I believe, that coordinates this.
Oh, okay.
And it's, of course, one of the difficulties is it's not only a cross-department issue,
Yeah.
but it is also has to involve the utility providers that are third parties as well.
Right.
And so I do understand that it's a very complex undertaking, and it can only happen in an economic way when, repaving is happening and, lots of other things are being planned. But we're just treading water.
Well, it's very interesting because in my liaison report, the fiber committee actually talked about this and how they can use ARPA money to move this ahead a little quicker with the undergrounding. So we'll get to that. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Franks? How about from the audience? Anybody or anyone watching at home have any comments?
Ms. Ackerman, we're joined by the Assistant Town Engineer. I don't know if he wants to say anything.
Okay, Mr. Dukran, are you there?
This is actually Justin Richardson. I'm here. Just wanted to say that I reviewed the plans in the letter and coordinated with CMLP related to this. And these are the 10 comments we came up with in coordination for Comcast to abide by, essentially. So
Thank you. And what is that beautiful scenery behind you?
that's actually Cannon Mountain
Oh, okay.
from Mount Lincoln.
So Justin, I actually have a question for you. The forms that the select board signs off on routinely for this kind of work make no reference to the conditions that your department puts on them. So I'm wondering how you handle that and if you've ever had any difficulties with that.
Typically, they get the conditions get attached to the permit. That the grant of location that gets issued to the municipality. So I think that's how we typically handle those.
Okay, so it's probably important that our motion makes reference to that, and I think we do from time to time. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Linda. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, we will take a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, and now for the main motion.
Sure. Move to grant the location petition from Comcast of Massachusetts 3 to install aerial cable, coaxial cable from the utility pole 38 to utility pole 43 near 516 Monument Street, abiding by the conditions as written in the Concord Public Works Memorandum of January 14th, 2022.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Until next time.
Thank you. We will move on to the extending of the term of the intermunicipal agreement for Making the Connections program. I understand Marcia Rasmussen might be with us for that.
Yes, I'm here via Zoom.
Hi, Marcia.
Good evening. The,
So as I understand this, the previous select board approved this program in December of 2020, and we can now extend it to, I believe, June 30th of 2022. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Okay, do you want to give us a very brief reminder what this program is exactly?
Well, Concord hasn't been able to take advantage quite as of the program as much as other communities have, primarily Sudbury, but we've learned a lot through the process. This is a grant to determine how to provide funding for those who have difficulty making connections in our communities. The communities of Sudbury, Concord, Maynard, Stowe, and Bolton have been involved in these conversations to help residents or identify ways we might help residents get from point A to point B if they don't have a vehicle. And it had limited funding. It was using Lyft, Uber, and subsidies to taxis. So there were 3 different ways that people were being offered opportunities for transit. And we've been working with a company called Nelson Nygaard. They have created a survey so that we've been able to have that available for residents to provide input. And we've learned a lot from the other contracts that have been put together through Sudbury and been part of that conversation. So while we weren't able to take advantage of everything that was available through the grant promoter, Adam Deschaneux, I'm sorry, who is the planner in Sudbury, they were able to extend the grant to June 30th of 2022. And so we want to take advantage of that as well.
Great. So there is no dollar cost to the town to do this, is that right?
That is correct.
So I've got a couple of more questions and then take questions from the board. When you say Concord hasn't used it much yet, do you have usage data on Concord population for this program?
I do not. That information, as I said, they're gathering the survey responses, and those are going to be made available next month at our meeting. I did not pursue the contracts with the taxi companies that we might have been able to use, nor did I, were we able to implement an Uber and Lyft program through the Council on Aging. So there were a number of things that Sudbury was way ahead of us on, and I've learned a lot from them and through them, but given everything else that my office has been dealing with, that is one of the things that I was unable to get completed.
And you don't think that you would be able to get the contracts between now and June 30th?
I might be able to, but again, we are greatly short-staffed. I have been working with our health division that is short-staffed. And there is a lot of activity going on. When my staff just in the planning division, we serve 10 different town boards and committees, and they are all active in different aspects. So
Okay, I know you're the acting health director now, so I understand there's a lot going on. Okay, other questions from other members? Matt?
Yeah, so it sounds like the reason to extend this agreement is really to just take advantage of the survey information and just lay the groundwork for future cooperation, as opposed to it. I think there was some grant money, but I would assume that by now it would have all been spent, but, and that none of that was really available to us to take advantage of.
There was a small amount available, and if I were able to get the contracts in place, we could take advantage of that over the next 4 months. So it's not unheard of. And if we had residents who would be interested in taking part in that, we could make it available.
I do believe that the Transportation Committee might be interested, and they might even be willing to help get those contracts. Can I put you in touch with the chair, Nick Pappas, and you
Yes.
guys can exchange information?
Sure, yes, that would be
Okay,
fine.
great.
I'd like to point out one very important thing about this contract on page 3. One is in paragraph 7, which says that no party shall be obligated to incur any financial cost above the amount made available to the compact through grants and gifts or other sources, unless the financial obligation is supported by an appropriation made in accordance with law. And later on, it says that any party may but shall not be required to raise money by any lawful means to further the purposes of the compact. Those are critical provisions of this agreement, and I want to point them out as being one of the issues that was not successfully dealt with in the compact agreement for the REC. That is the regional emergency response center. And this is something that we need to consider in any agreement with other towns as to the ability of the town to control the appropriations of funds that are used to finance the activity.
Okay, good point, Henry. I just want to remind everybody to speak right up to the microphone. Does Kerry or Marshall want to respond to that? Is this?
I guess the only thing that I would say is Henry has raised that point before with the rec, and that is something that we need to continue to work on, because I understand the concern, but I don't have anything to add relative to this particular contract.
I just see this as an example of
Yeah.
how this is dealt with in a more comprehensive agreement.
Okay. Other questions for Marcia? Comments? Okay, I think we are ready for a vote.
Move to approve the amendment to the Inter-Municipal Agreement extension for Making the Connections program with the new expiry date of June 30th, 2022.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Marcia, for joining us.
Thank you.
We will move on to vote to appoint the interim finance director.
Thank you. I'm very excited to bring to you this evening a request to appoint 2 individuals actually to serve as interim finance director, 2 retired individuals who are interested in job sharing. Each of them will work part-time. I believe that they are here with us on Zoom this evening. The process was we advertised the position. There were 6 people that applied. I had informal interviews with each of the parties that was interested. At one point, I thought that maybe there would be some more formal interviews with the committee, but after meeting with this pair of retired individuals, I felt that they were far and away the best fit for this position. Those 2 individuals are Gail Dowd and Bob LaLesher. Gail and Bob have actually worked together for several years in the town of Reading. Bob is the soon-to-be retired town manager for the town of Reading, and Gail is the recently retired CFO for the Reading Public School system. So they have an existing working relationship. I've known Bob for a number of years, did just meet Gail through this process. I have included a copy of their resumes in the packet for you to review, and you can see that they both are individually well qualified for this position. I think, not to speak for either one of them, but I think in talking to them, what they both appreciated about this role was the opportunity to work on projects that as managers, you often get involved in day-to-day and supervisory aspects of the job. I have assured them that each of the 5 divisions in the finance department has a very capable division manager, and that will allow them the opportunity to work on projects. So Gail has experience with school construction projects, so that's particularly helpful over the next several months. Bob actually has experience in converting financial software from the system that we're using right now to the system that we are going to. And there are only a few municipalities in Massachusetts that use the financial suite that we currently use. So that was a particular bonus to have, for him to have that experience. So again, I think they both are here and interested in saying hello. Chris, do you have Bob and Gail?
Yeah. Ms. Dowd and Mr. Ledletcher, feel free to open your mics.
Great. Thank you, Kerry, for that great introduction. As Kerry mentioned, I'll speak for myself and let Bob speak for himself. I'm definitely excited for this opportunity. The project side of it sounds very exciting and very in line with the work that I've done over the past 5 years in the Reading Public Schools, as well as in my previous private sector experience. Have done a lot of GL conversions and information such as that. And I've definitely had a lot of capital project experience over the past 5 years with the schools. So looking forward to this opportunity.
Great, thank you, Gail.
Thanks, Gail. I'm Bob. I'm glad to meet you all. As you probably well know, Carrie is one of the kindest people in our industry. And when she asked in January if I could find someone to help, Gail certainly came to mind, but Gail isn't available full time, so I got roped in. It's actually very exciting though, because when you are a town manager, really all you do is put out fires all day and occasionally start one or two. And it's true that working on a project and actually completing it might be a wonderful thing to experience. It's really been some time since I've been able to do that. And as Carrie mentioned, Gail and I have worked together for several years. This is a really interesting and unique opportunity that I also really look forward to.
Thank you both. Some of you have probably heard me say when I received Bob's response to my email, I was at home jumping up and down, and my husband asked me, you know, what's going on? And I said, you won't believe what just happened. And I explained it to him. So it's really an exciting opportunity for me to work with these two individuals, and also to feel a level of comfort in being able to let go of the finance department, at least through this interim period, and know that it's in good hands.
That is really great. I can tell already, just meeting you, Bob and Gail, for 30 seconds, how you have a depth of experience and sense of humor, and definitely going to need all of your talent. Thank you so much for joining us in Concord. Susan.
I just had a question actually for both of you. I noticed that you both have extensive experience in the private sector, and I was just curious about what drew each of you to municipal work.
You want me to go first, Bob?
Sure.
Actually, I not too unfamiliar with that question. I went through that when I interviewed for the CFO position at the school side. I actually, while I thoroughly enjoyed my private sector experience, I really was looking for an opportunity to take everything I had learned in the private sector and apply it into the public sector. I had done a lot of research into the skill set that folks were looking for, and that even back then, I would say 5 years ago, there was a little bit of a shortage of folks looking to make that leap. So for me, it was really an opportunity to sort of give back to a local community and try to impart some of the wisdom and skills that I had learned in the private sector, which I feel were very transferable into the public sector.
Thank you, Gail.
And for me, my wife and I moved to Reading over 25 years ago, and within a year or two, I had joined the Finance Committee. And I started to notice that when I would suddenly travel for business unexpectedly and miss a Finance Committee meeting, that I was really getting angry. And that sort of translated into 16 years working for the town of Reading. It's really something that I had never planned, but I really enjoyed. And, one thing that I set out to do was to be able to spend more time with our two daughters as they were growing up, to just work a mile or two away, from the house. And again, not to have to travel as much. And that was all true, but I did end up working a lot more hours than I would have in the private sector. So I didn't expect that, but it's really been a pleasure. The kind of people, the quality of people you meet in the public sector is just terrific. And again, I'm really looking forward to meeting some people in Concord.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board?
I just had two comments, as that I think that it's quite a considerable advantage to have someone who is experienced with this conversion from the admin system to the Mooney system. When we were selecting our interim town manager, I think the most significant risk factor that was raised was the possibility of losing focus on that migration that we're undertaking right now. I work in the IT industry, and I know that it's like getting a heart transplant to do something like this. The other thing that I was struck by was just the last paragraph of the letter. I mean, by the way, I was very impressed by the letter overall, which was like the statement: the solar financing and OPEB investment advisors seem like a lower priority items at this time. And it's like, well, y'all haven't even started. And so, I mean, I found that a little startling. And on the other hand, I guess, it's good. If we're going to try to get some projects done, you got to start focusing right away.
Yeah.
But it was striking. Okay.
Linda?
So these questions are welcome to both of them, and these questions are more for Carrie, I think. I noticed in our agenda, it's hire a finance director, but you're going to have staff who are working with two people. So, is the nomenclature going to be, co-finance directors, or, have you thought about how that's going to work? And also, my second part of this, and I'm sure you've thought of it, is in terms of how we're going to handle this budget-wise.
Yeah.
I assume it's going to maybe require some budget transfers and some other things to cover it, or?
So on the first question, I guess we're lucky because Gail is hoping to start later this week and Bob is not available for a month. So I think we have a month to figure out how we're going to refer to them. In terms of the budget, so the town manager's salary is budgeted in the town manager's office, the CFO salary in the finance. So both of those salaries are budgeted. And the hiring of these two individuals falls within the budget that is already set.
And then the other part of the question, thank you for that, has to do with, we're not sure the amount of time that's needed at this point. So how are you thinking about that?
So the proposal is for a maximum of 50 hours per week for the two individuals together. So obviously, as hourly employees, they need to be compensated for any attendance at committee meetings that might be outside of business hours. So we're still working through what that might look like. I'm hoping that there isn't a whole lot of committee meeting work assigned to these individuals, but it's for a maximum of 50 hours per week combined, and that falls within the existing budget.
And they have the flexibility to be on 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, whatever it takes.
Yeah, so right now we're looking at through June 30, and they have indicated that they are available for a longer period of time if that is needed, or if things change that, they're both retired, so they can be not available if something else happens.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're ready for a vote, and as I understand this, we vote to approve the,
Her appointment.
right,
yeah.
it's the town manager's appointment, and we vote to approve it.
Move to approve the interim town manager's appointment of Gail S. Dowd and Robert H. LeLesher,
LeLesher.
sorry, Jr. as interim finance director.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, welcome to Bob and Gail. Thank you very much. We look forward to meeting you and having you on our team.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
You too.
okay, we now turn to the 2022 annual town meeting warrant. We have 2 issues to do tonight. As I said, the public hearings start on February 28th. Right now, we are going to order the warrant so that it can be completed, go to the printer tomorrow, and be mailed to every household.
Isn't that giving us too much time?
Well, it's a rush, but we'll make it. Okay, lost my table of contents. Okay, so, this table of contents that we're looking at in the packet is a draft put together by Chris Carmody, our moderator Carmen Reese, Carrie and myself, and there may have been some other people involved.
It doesn't have an overall page number, unfortunately. You want to just peek at this?
Yeah, we can just share, that's great.
Are we still planning on having a one-day town meeting this year? I mean, where
Okay.
the order of the
Okay, that's a
articles
good
really
question.
depends on the structure of the meeting
Okay,
itself.
excellent question. So Carmen has requested to come to one of our next meetings where we're going to talk about the logistics of the town meeting. But her initial thought is that this may go, it starts on Sunday at 1 o'clock. And one of the things that our board has to decide is what would the adjournment time be on Sunday? We don't have to decide that tonight, but we're going to have to decide if we're not finished by, say, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, or whatever, that we adjourn to Monday. And then if we're not finished on Monday, we adjourn to Tuesday. So I think Carmen is kind of guessing that it might take Sunday and Monday, but we really don't know. It used to take us 4 nights to do town meetings, she was reminding me.
Usually 3.
Well, she said 12 hours. So, maybe 3 or 4 nights. And on the other hand, I think people really liked finishing in one day. So we may end up with something in the middle.
Do you know, has there been a decision made yet as to whether it's going to be indoors or outdoors? Or that's not?
No, we're going to discuss all of that.
But my concern is this, that if you have at the end of the meeting, all of the zoning articles and almost all of the petition articles, and you get through everything else, and then you haven't gotten to those yet. And then you have a session at the end with just those things, and nobody is going to be there, that you may get some really weird results.
That's
because-
right. So let me address that. First of all, we did try to move petition articles around into various places. And this is not the definite order. We need to discuss it tonight and come out with a definite order. But we'll see, for example, number 16 is a petition article.
23.
23 is a petition article.
30.
30. 30 is a petition article. So we have 8 petition articles. We have a lot this year. There are a lot at the end, but we did try to sprinkle them around. Secondly, we do anticipate that one of the planning articles will be a very high interest article, and that is number 43, the Thoreau Depot. We had over 300 people at the forum recently for that. So we do expect quite a lot of people for that one.
Well, but you're not going to get them if you have, most of the meeting is over and then they're on, Tuesday evening or something like that. People just aren't going to show up.
Well, they might.
They might show up for the
They
one
might.
issue.
Yeah, I mean,
might.
they showed up for that forum.
That's
so-
more frequently what you find in a high
Right.
interest article.
Anyway, we're open to suggesting this. It's the selectmen's warrant. We're the ones who have to decide what to do. I will say that in considering this, Articles 1 through 10 is pretty standard order. That's what we usually do, 1 through 10 first in these particular ones. We also try to keep all the school articles together, all the planning board articles together, etc., and all the enterprise articles together.
Are we up against any deadline to get this ordering?
Yes,
Finalized.
we have to do it tonight.
We have to do
We
it.
have to do it tonight. It's really unfortunate. I recommended to staff yesterday or Friday or whatever that next time that we allow more time because the warrant closed on the 2nd. By the time staff put this together on the 3rd or 4th, and we had a little meeting on it, and it went in your packet. I mean, it's like, it was actually going to go to the printer today, but we convinced them, no, the select board has to vote the order.
Well, I would like to see 42 and 43, I think are high interest, moved up so to someplace where they're sure to be on the first day of the meeting.
Okay. And then if we do that, then we may have that problem. Is there something else that you would like to put near the end of the meeting so we can keep some interest? With the
Adjournment?
crowd? Is there something else that you want to put near the end of the meeting that is high interest to keep a good sized crowd?
I said adjournment.
Okay.
Terry, I just want to note that I'm here. This is Carmen Reese, the moderator, so I'm here if you wish to consult on anything.
Oh, thank you. Maybe you might want to answer some of the questions that, I apologize, it's hard to tell with this TV screen here. I'm glad you're here. Maybe you could give us some of your thinking about what was asked a few minutes ago, which was how many nights or days you think town meeting will be and why you want to put Article 43 near the end, and any other thoughts you have.
Taking up the length of the meeting, it really depends on the extent to which we go back to pre-COVID town meeting procedures. And it's difficult for us to know that right now, what our situation will be on May 1st. But the Omicron trend right now is quelling. And if we don't get another big surge, I suppose it's our hope that we'll be in a situation where we can return to a large extent to our pre-COVID town meeting procedures. But again, we just have to remain flexible. The board scheduled this meeting for May 1st so that We could move the meeting outdoors if we need to. Currently, the thinking is that we'll have it indoors. That's just easier for us from a technology standpoint, and we don't have to worry about rain or weather. But if we need to move it outside, we should be able to at that time of year. And that's the reason also that we've scheduled the first day for a Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m. rather than a Monday evening, so that we preserve that outdoor option should we need it. I think it is too soon to say whether we'll, obviously, if we're in the clutches of a new COVID wave, we will do everything in our power to do this outside and finish it in a single day. There is a lot on this warrant, and there is a lot that people will want to talk about and deliberate upon. And if we are able to, we should, my view is that we should give the voters the opportunity to do that. And that likely will take us past Sunday and into Monday, and potentially even into Tuesday. But I would hope that it wouldn't take us past Monday. But again, that also depends on what time the select board determines adjournment will be on that Sunday. Will we get a full 2 nights worth of town meeting done on Sunday so that if we're working hard, we can get the meeting concluded on a 3rd night, or will we need to go in effect to a 4th, which would be Tuesday? So I realize that's not as precise and well delineated an answer as people might like to have, but I think our COVID situation just, that's the lives we're living right now. So that's what I can say. In terms of the order of the warrant, this is really the select board's call. There's some effort to that is done by staff and with a little bit of input from me to just kind of put things down in a beginning place for you to consider the order. And something's always got to go last. And there's always the concern that people won't stay if there's something last, or that it's unfair to the things that are last. Something's got to go first. There are other considerations as well. It's important to keep articles that staff have to be out in the evening or in town on a weekend for together, so that you aren't imposing on them too terribly. That's one of the reasons to keep all the zoning articles together as a group and to try and keep them on a single day. So in the past, the select board has always dealt with the order of the warrant in a single meeting, and it's usually taken a half an hour, 45 minutes to have the conversation about what the order should be. And different theories have been applied in different years. Sometimes the board looking at the zoning articles and saying, gosh, they're awfully important and they really shape the lives we live in our town and they shouldn't go at the end. Other times feeling that other kinds of issues are getting too short shrift. The typical practice has been for town and school budgets to be taken care of up front on the first night of the meeting. And so that's just a little bit of context, but really the decisions are entirely yours. I'm not expecting that I'll schedule anything as a high interest article to give it a specific time this year. So we'll in fact take things up in the order in which they appear on the warrant. And it is much too soon to say what will end up on the consent calendar. Typically most of the enterprise funds end up on the consent calendar. Some of the zoning articles typically end up on the consent calendar if they're routine, non-controversial. And I don't know what else here might end up. The last 2 years, the CPA article has been on the consent calendar, but I know there are some folks who feel strongly that we shouldn't do that. And it should, in fact, be taken up in the regular course of business. So I am here to answer any questions, but the order is really up to you all.
Thank you, Carmen. Are there some comments, questions, suggestions from Linda, Susan, Matt?
I think it looks okay the way it is. I mean, in terms of, Carmen's remarks about the grouping of things, and I could easily see, well, it's hard to know. Once the consent agenda is typically like, how many, like 15 or so articles? I know it varies, but
Yeah, the
I'm
last
just
2
trying to
years,
get a
it's been
sense.
quite aggressively.
Right,
Right.
and that's because of the circumstances, but
Right, I think we'll know more after the public hearings.
yeah.
I think it was only maybe 10 or 12 articles before,
Mhm.
but it does vary a lot.
I concur with Susan. I think that while I could imagine switching things around, that I don't know that it would improve anything. So I'm okay with it. And it would be less work to keep it the way it is.
Linda?
I do have one question. Are we still, Article 15, are we still using the label placeholder?
No, we're
Okay,
not. This packet was put together on Friday,
okay.
and when I looked at the warrant today, it has a real name to it now,
Okay.
which the name escapes me, but Robin, if you would make a note to check with Chris and make sure that even in the table of contents, it doesn't say placeholder, but that it says the real name of that article.
That article is called Establishing an Electrification Trust right now.
Great, and it's in the table of contents that way as well?
Yeah. That's right.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
It was a lot of work to put this together in just a few days. So I think next year, maybe we'll give staff a whole week instead of 2 days or whatever. Harry, did you have a comment?
Sure, I just wanted to mention that Articles 4 and 5, ratification of personnel board classification actions and class and comp plan, are assigned right now to FinCom public hearings. That happened last year as well, but it used to be Select Board, and the Finance Committee had quite a discussion that they felt that that should be with the Select Board versus the Finance Committee, because it's really, it's not, even though they're establishing classification plans, there's no appropriation of funds or anything.
I'm glad
as a
you brought
result of
that up
that.
because Chris and I talked about that today. And he had put down that number 4 was Select Board and number 5 was FinCom. So I think we should decide, should they go together and who should do them?
My understanding and recollection is that before last year, both of those articles were Select Board articles. And I don't think there was any
I think you're right.
discussion to put them to Finance Committee. I think it was just an oversight on the staff of, on the part of staff to.
Yeah, And I
make that
do
assignment.
remember the comments from FinCom about this, so.
Okay, so let's do that. On the table of contents, number 4 and 5 will be changed to Select Board. Also on the table of contents, we are changing number 1 and 2. This is an old copy that we have here. There is no public hearing needed for Article 1 or 2. Okay. Other comments, questions, ideas about the order of the warrant?
Well, if we could identify those items that were truly non-controversial, which would normally go on the consent agenda, why don't we try to put those at the end? And
Right.
then-
So I think that Carmen will be doing that,
Yeah, well,
but if I could just answer your question, like, for example, I think 48 and 49, unpaid bills and debt rescission. These might not even be moved, or they might be non-controversial, but
And they
that,
always go at the end.
right, but that just means that now the end is number 47.
Right.
So no matter how many non-controversials you put at the end, the one right before that is really the end. So you still sort of stuck in the same quagmire anyway.
No, because it might be, for instance, like the OPEB trust fund expenses are probably going to be non-controversial.
Right.
So they're more or less routine administration things. Those two, the 13 and 14, you can put those at the end and make room to move some other stuff up.
But it doesn't really change anything in that they're not likely to be, part of the meeting. So
Well, what
whether
I'm-
their number is a low number or a high number, they're not going to affect the,
But what I'm trying to do is get some of the things that I think are going to be significant and controversial, like 42 and 43, up so that normally you have the most people are in attendance during the first day of the meeting. The people who come for the budget, for the big budget items and all that stuff, and just for the,
Right.
so
So are
I
you
think
suggesting, for example, we could trade,
try and move those up.
right, we
to-
could trade
So
13 and
early,
14?
move them up early enough so that they are pretty certain to come on day one if
Right.
it is a multi-day meeting.
So Henry, are you suggesting, for example, that we put 13 and 14, trade them with 42 and 43?
That's a good idea. Sure.
If I might, you have 5 zoning articles, and I think you want to keep them together as a block.
Well,
That's articles 40, well, it's actually 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, and 45.
I think the one thing that you could do that would
6.
be material, Henry, it would be to take all the enterprise fund articles and move them after the zoning articles, right?
Yep.
But I have to say that in the past, I've advocated for keeping, pushing the enterprise articles forward just because there's so many occasions in which the presentation happens at midnight and they're actually very well thought through presentations and they actually affect every citizen. And I think all of us really should get the benefit of those presentations. Yet, we often don't.
Well, I think that if you were to move the enterprise funds, most of them end up on the consent calendar anyway, so it doesn't make a lot of material
Well,
difference.
the past 2 years they have, but in the past, for example, for, public works, expenditures, we have gotten, and there have been significant presentations that have been
I
made.
think they were doing one
One a year.
a year,
Yeah.
and they put all the others on the consent calendar.
Yeah.
Carmen, that's a question for you. Would you want to possibly go back to that old system where you put one enterprise fund article on the regular calendar and all the others on the consent calendar?
Yes, unless we're in the grip of a new COVID surge, I would expect that to be the plan. If we're in the grip of a new COVID surge, they'll all go on the consent calendar.
Okay.
Sure. But what about the concept of moving all of the enterprise fund articles after the zoning articles? That, because I can't see any other change, without really messing with the natural order of articles, being able to achieve what Henry's suggesting.
Right. Well, I think you certainly can do that. If most of them, if all but one of them end up on the consent calendar, it won't make a practical difference, but you certainly can do it.
No, I would be taking like Articles 30 through 37 and then placing them after Article 45.
Yes, you could do that. And I can tell you that Article 30 would not end up on the consent calendar because that's a citizen petition.
That's right. So that's about the only change that I would entertain. Again, I'm fine with it the way it is, but
So in other words, the one that's now number 38 would become number 30?
that's right.
Okay. He's saying move 30 through 37 to after number,
38 is going to go on the consent calendar.
But then doesn't that mean instead of, oh, okay, so, and those numbers will be filled by 40 to 40.
no, he's saying take 30 through 37.
Yeah.
And then take 41 through 45 and move them where 30 to 37 is. So basically swap those
Doing a
two sets.
swap.
Well, that's one way
Okay.
to do it. Swap the zoning and the enterprise articles. And the petition articles that go naturally with them. I mean, that, you know, clearly a solar generation development plan belongs with the enterprise articles.
Okay, so you have 8 enterprise fund articles, so you need to swap for 8 of the other
No,
ones.
you don't. You just, as long as you got a block, you
Numbers.
just take one block and
Yeah.
and the numbers will change, but
I see. All right.
again, it's just a tweak. What do you think?
Comments? Ideas? Anybody? Linda?
I think it's a possibility. It's hard to know, how many are going to end up.
Right.
Henry, what do you think?
I think it's progress, especially we're dealing with the unknown as to how it's going to break up. But usually that's something you kind of strategize when you make predictions about when the different nights or days of the meeting are going to break, and you try to get, important articles on the agenda when you think you'll have a large attendance.
So you're in favor of that switch?
Hmm?
You're in favor of this switch?
Switching, yeah. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
anything you can do to move it up. I just don't think that you should have important things like at the end, at the
understand.
very end, because and it may work out if you have one thing that's high interest that drives people there, but then you take the risk that you get crazy
Right,
results
I
because
just meant
there are only 10 people there
you
by the
agree
time you get to them.
with Matt's suggestion about putting it in the
Popping,
30s.
And I think the other comment I would make is I know it's really difficult to manage these meetings, especially if you don't know what the time is, but I think that the routine at the special town meeting where people were given 1 minute to speak is a little tight.
Okay, so let's hold that thought for when
Yeah,
Carmen comes
but-
back. And it sounds like we maybe have a consensus here then for moving 30 through 37 and swapping it with, would you go with 40? Would 40 be included? Scenic roads bylaw, that's gonna get a lot of people.
I think that's a general bylaw. So I would suggest starting with 41.
41 through
41 through 45.
45. Okay, so the proposal is to swap 30 through 37 with 41 through 45.
That's right.
May I suggest keeping Article 40 with the zoning articles, because I believe that the planning board is going to be shepherding that at town meeting.
Oh, I see. It's also in the
I
planning board
agree with
hearing.
that.
Okay, go ahead. Yep,
It's
yep.
also a very
So
high
it's 40,
interest
so
article.
40 through,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's
okay.
very high interest, and so it would help what Henry wants to
Okay.
accomplish.
All right.
All right, then, are there any other changes that people would like to make? All right, I think we are ready for a motion then.
Sure, so move to approve the order of the 2022 annual town meeting warrant articles as reflected in the table of contents and included in this meeting packet, with the exception of moving the articles currently numbered 30 through 37 to the positions where currently the articles 40 through 45 are, and moving those that are currently numbered 40 through 45 to start at position number 30.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, very good. We now turn to, if you have the hard copy, we had a revision today on some of the wording of the articles, and it's a 2-page thing with this blue, red and blue. Sort of separate from that. Like this. There's a revision, yeah, that's it, Henry. Okay, so we need to approve the wording. We have 3 select board articles. First one is the senior means tested tax exemption. Now, we also have Article 11 that if the legislature votes to do this, then we will not need Article 12 and we will instead do Article 11. But we may need Article 12 and we may need to transfer money to support this. We're looking at the top here, Article 12 on the top. Okay, so the only change since you saw this last is that we're putting in from available funds because we don't know if it's going to come from overlay surplus or free cash or something else. So does anyone have a question on Article 12? All right, I think we're ready for a motion.
Oh, okay, I thought we were going to do them all.
We can do them all if you want.
Why don't we, yeah, let's go ahead and discuss each of the 3 and just do one motion.
All right, Article 24 is what we've talked about before. We've done this in 3 previous years. Appropriate funds for affordable housing development. In the past 3 years, we've put in $500,000. Again, we are waiting for the legislature to act so we can get a permanent source of funding. Right now, this may be a placeholder. We may end up moving this article. We may not. We may put in less money. We don't really know. But for the purposes of the warrant, we are proposing the same as last year and the year before, the sum of $500,000. Anyone? Linda?
So my only question here has to do with the wording. I understand this could be a placeholder, but you know, on Article 12, we talk about transferring the town will vote to transfer from available funds directly to the senior means exemption for the fiscal year. In this case, it's talking about under the direction of the town manager and conditions of the select board, and then to the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That was the wording we used before the trust fund was operational.
Right.
And I'm wondering if it can't reflect a more direct
I think that
route.
makes sense.
Yes, good point. I think what was done was we just took the boilerplate from last year. So I think what you're saying is let's cross out on the 3rd line, to be expended under the direction of the town manager on such terms and conditions as the select board may determine. And just, and including, so it just should say,
Get rid of all the including transferring the funds and then start with 2. So basically you'd say,
Right,
oh,
right.
yeah,
so now it's going to read, to determine whether the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from free cash the sum of $500,000 for the purpose of developing or supporting affordable housing within the town. To,
the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Or
right,
take any other action
Right.
there too. Yeah, much simpler.
Okay.
all right, good.
And but it looks like the explanation box is still fine.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate still. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Article 38 Chris did a good draft of it, but when council looked at it this morning, they decided that a lot could be crossed out. And it really only needs to say this top part, that we're going to vote to adopt the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 53, Section 18B, all the way up to the word separate mailing, period. And then if you go to the next page where it says at the bottom, day 1, day 2, and all that, council is recommending that all those calendar days go in the narrative box. They're not voted as part of the article because the law already provides all of those rules.
And it might change,
Right,
in which case this would then be out of sync with it.
right.
Great.
Is that clear? Is that making sense?
It is clear, but is that going to go before or after the narrative that exists in the box now? So in other words,
Do we need all this process even in the explanation box? I don't even know why we need it there. If it's explained as part of the law, I mean, we don't normally go through all this.
I don't think people care.
Yeah, I
And
don't,
the whole point is that
I think we can strike
statements
this.
can
Yes,
be-
take it all out.
statements can
Especially if
be,
if, by definition, if it can go in the explanatory box, it's not necessary.
We can explain it when we get to town meeting or on the
Yeah.
public hearing, we can explain all of this.
Okay.
You don't
All right,
even need
good.
to explain it. It's just that the whole point is that statements can be presented with ballot questions.
Right.
That's
And
the
that-
essence
Yeah,
of it.
but I mean,
Okay.
you could have a slide that just showed, like, this is the process.
Right, I'll put together that slide. Looks
Yeah.
like we just cut and paste this chart here.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
it's really internal operational just instructions.
Well, it lets people
Yeah.
know that proponents and opponents will have a chance,
Yeah.
150 words and all of that kind of stuff. Okay. Any other question on Article 38? All right, then, I think we're ready for a motion.
Move to approve the select board sponsorship of the following 3 articles, copies of which were included in the board packet for this meeting. Article 12, appropriation for senior means tested tax exemptions. Article 24, appropriate funds for affordable housing development as amended in this meeting. And Article 38, adopt local ballot option pursuant to Mass General Laws 5818B as amended in this meeting.
Second. There's one wordsmith thing. You said vote to adopt? What was the very
To
first-
approve the select board sponsorship
Oh, okay, sponsorship and wording, I guess.
and wording of the
Yeah.
following 3, okay.
Right.
Move to approve the select board sponsorship and wording of the following 3 articles,
Right.
as I mentioned.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Okay, we are now on to extending the term dates of members serving on the Civil War Monument Task Force. Henry, do you want to talk about this one?
Sure, be happy to. That committee has done a fantastic job.
Henry, can you just speak
Oh,
right?
and I
into-
speak into
Yeah.
the, yes.
Put it
They've
put it
done,
right
they've,
next- move
they've done
the-
a lot of historical research. They have, they're chasing down the cost of restoring the monument and replacing the plaque. And they need more time to complete the report. They were given 6 months to, as a task force, to come back to us a report. They would like 60 more days in order to complete the report. And I think it's worth waiting for. They have been very diligent. They have not been dragging their feet at all. I've been to many of their meetings. And although they're not asking for it at this point, I suggest that once we see their report and their recommendations, I would like the board to consider having that task force be converted into a committee to implement the recommendations that they have made to the board in conjunction with the town manager. But that's not on the agenda. That's just looking at the future. They're just asking for 60 days to complete their report, and I suggest that we give them that opportunity.
Okay, so you're suggesting that we extend this for 60 days, and then in 60 days, we take it up again with a revised charge.
Yes, except that, I think that if they, the way it's originally written, they disband upon the presentation of the report. And I think we should extend it beyond the presentation of the report in order for us to make the decision as to what we'd like to do as a result of the report they make. So I would suggest that we give them 60 days to give us the report, and maybe then give another 30 days to the board to decide whether or not, under what and under what circumstances, the task force would continue.
Okay, I was going to suggest that we do it all in one step, but I'm looking at the existing charge, and I guess their only charge now is just to make a determination and not to actually do the implementation. So I
That's
guess
right,
we
and
need to,
then it says they present the report and disband, but I do want to have time after they give us the report to decide whether or not they disband.
okay,
So if we just extended 60 days, what would happen, and they give us the report on the 60th day, they're done, and we have to recreate them. So
This
I'd
is
rather,
saying May 31st, which is much more than 60 days.
not really.
well, is it? It may be. I talked to Chris today, and
End
I
of
think
April.
it's in April, and I think we
Over
had,
90 days.
I think he thought it might be, since the middle of April puts us like right in the middle of the town meeting kind of activity, that it might not get attention
Right.
if it comes to maturity during that period. And so we make it 90 days and puts us into May, so town meeting will be behind us.
Yeah.
That's all. That's
Right, but also, I don't know that there's any real problem with the task force dissolving, in that we're going to need a new charge for a new body anyway. I mean, we may appoint the very same members.
Yeah, well,
but
it
I
seems.
don't see it as a problem necessarily.
Right,
it's
but
a
I
certain.
also don't see a problem to extend to May 31st either.
No, I don't see that time frame as
I
being
think
a problem.
there may be a kind of
I'm
a,
just wondering if changing the wording, because I think what Henry's suggesting is changing the wording, that when you file the report, it will be dissolved. I think that,
just take that, just delete that word.
just delete it, yeah.
That, I think that does it. It's too simple.
I mean, the terms will go until May 31st, so, if they file the report before then they're still standing until then.
And we delete the words. and
Yeah, so we
thereupon
will remove that
disband.
whereupon it will be dissolved. So,
We
may
will
I
give,
make a motion?
and that we will grant them eternal life.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I can do that, but I'll try. Move to amend the charge of the Civil War Monument Task Force as follows. Section C, to extend the terms of the members to expire on May 31st, 2022. And Section D, that the committee will file its final report by May 31st, 2022.
And are you also going to
And
add?
delete the words.
And delete the word,
Oh, and remove the words whereupon it shall be dissolved from Section D. Thank you. That's true. We have to delete them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Good. All right, and we thank the Civil War Monument Task Force for their work, and we're looking forward to seeing the report.
In the right direction.
Okay, we are ready for liaison reports. Susan.
I have
so-
just two reports. Oh, sorry, Linda.
so can I just, if it's Robin who ends up amending the charge, that she includes all of the wording as presented, yeah. Because sometimes they type the minutes and don't realize they need to go.
We'll take a look at it together.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and there's also, you got to add the new date at the top and.
Right, posted on the website
Yep.
and all that,
Yep.
okay, right. Good. Okay, go ahead, Susan.
I'm just, the two committees I'm going to report on tonight, there was a number of them since we haven't done this in a while, but this afternoon, there was a meeting of the Personnel Study Task Force. which had a lot of discussion about a proposed survey, but they also heard a presentation that Claude Chiquetti, who's a task force member, put together about the personnel bylaw, which was just outlined how things are divided up now, tasks, who's the town manager, personnel board, town meeting, and then, and this is all draft, proposed changes, amendments that the task force could consider to the bylaw, which that was great information and good to hear that put together in that way. The other meeting that was notable and recent was the White Pond Advisory Committee is very concerned about access to the pond because the state did not approve fencing that we had wanted to do, the town had wanted to do. And they're concerned about access to the pond from the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, that last half mile, and also from this there's a significant development in Sudbury that in its material says there are trails to White Pond. So they're concerned about the impact of those two items, and they'll continue to discuss it. And those are the high interest items from my group.
Thank you. Who is next?
I can go next.
All right, Linda.
The Concord Historical Commission has been working hard, as everyone knows, on the Scenic Roads bylaw. They, on February 9th at 8 o'clock in the morning, that's this Wednesday, there will be a historic issues coffee for people who are interested in a variety of issues, including this particular Scenic Roads bylaw. There is it's contemplated that they will be doing a public forum called On the Road to History to give citizens an opportunity to learn all the research that went in behind preparing for this bylaw and what the researchers learned themselves in the process. So I think that's the highlights from that meeting. The Historic Districts Commission has 2 sites visits coming up in either later this week or early next week on for 2 business applications, and one of them is for the Colonial Inn, making some changes to their facade and some other changes as well as the O'Brien Design Group. I mention that because recently there was site visits and approval for the changes for the Milldam Terry development. So, and that we're all aware that the business community is getting attention on some of these items. The other thing, the developer presented a second application for 1615 Low Road, and I previously reported that had many citizen participants in that conversation over a number of weeks, and that was a very prolonged discussion and eventually did not come to fruition. So the developer brought back a second application, although it felt like the third and the fourth and the fifth because of all the iterations we've been through. That application was also denied, and that's at the Hildreth corner on Barrett's Mill Road and Lowell Road, which is considered very historic.
What was that address again?
615 Lowell Road. It's a vacant lot at this point. So I just wanted people to be aware of that. That meeting went on till 11:30 at night.
Excuse me, Linda, was that planning board or?
No, that was the Historic Districts
Oh,
Commission.
historic districts. Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
And there's just been a lot of controversy about all the development on that corner. Staying in the sort of the history mode here, the cemetery committee met, and as I've reported before, they are doing a great job and a great job in terms of taking their role and mission seriously, and preservation and actually trying to improve conditions in the library, in the cemetery. There were 3 excellent presentations at this last meeting, 2 of which were from the Friends of Sleepy Hollow, proposing some gifts, both for some signage for the Pritchard Gate, as well as potential gift for iron bollards in front of the Melvin Memorial. And a great deal of discussion about that. They finally decided that they were not in the position to accept the gift, and that the gift needed to come to the select board. I did recommend to their liaison to the Friends that they may want to talk to the Historic Commission, not only for their guidance, but their support. And because they're not technically under the Historic Districts Commission, but the aspects they're talking about in terms of the gifts are have historic implications. And then the other point that I mentioned was that the select board is increasingly aware of, in accepting gifts, what the ongoing maintenance and future costs of whatever that gift might be. And so that was that. The other presentation that was excellent was on the landscape and ground cover for the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, which is in really disrepair in a lot of different areas. And I think there's a real awareness of the historic treasure that's there, and trying to upgrade the conditions in that library, in that cemetery, I keep saying library, sorry, cemetery, while still keeping the what they call a more garden style of cemetery land. But there are bare spots, and people come from, obviously it's a draw for economic development in town as well as historic interest. So there's a real resurgence of activity there, I think, which is excellent to see. I attended a meeting of the trustees of town donations, and they were working with their investment advisory group, as well as looking at some of the disbursements from the variety of funds, which in some case included reaching out to groups like the Hugh Cargill and others that are affected by the distribution of those funds. The Concord Housing Authority continues to do their business, and they've just put together a RFP for the Commonwealth Avenue project, since they were unsuccessful getting the funds through the trust, or through the select board actually at that point. And so you got to hand it to them. They're really doing everything they can to seek alternative ways to make that project happen. The Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust meets weekly.
Wow.
We have extensive assignments during the week that we have to have done and ready. I think there's a lot of work going into the policy development, into defining terms so that we can bring them to the select board for their approval, and have some clear guidelines for trust distributions while we're waiting for a new housing production plan to be promulgated.
Right, they'll be coming to the select board March 7th.
Right. And then, like many of my colleagues at this table, I attended 5 or 6 of the Mass Municipal Annual Conference sessions. And in particular, when Matt was talking earlier about the regulations that are coming down from DHCD for the MBTA communities, towns were encouraged to review the draft guidelines for town-wide implications that are even though the grant is very specific in terms of what it's for. So that may, Matt, that resonated earlier when you were talking about there may be a role beyond the planning board,
Yeah.
at least looking at the draft regulations and seeing if we have any additional comments besides the planning board. And then,
Can those be circulated to us?
Those draft regulations?
Yeah.
There, gosh, I got a note for them. I don't know. I thought we all did, but maybe not. Okay.
I'll make a note to circulate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
but we may want to put that on
Yep,
future.
got it
Yeah.
on board already.
Future agenda item. And there were some legal updates. You mentioned one of them, Terry, in terms of what's in the legislation for the continuing open meeting law regulations. And there have been some other case law that's come down that it's worth all of us for sure, if you haven't had a chance to hear that seminar. That's the highlights, I think.
I neglected one report, and that was the Economic Vitality Committee, which met last week. And the main thrust of their discussion was the importance of an economic vitality officer. And the role would be to kind of shepherd potential business owners through the process of identifying a property, going through the permitting, and a couple of people, one of the restaurant owners that is part of that committee has a restaurant in Concord, but also in Needham, and he's going to open one in Bedford. And Bedford does have this position, and he talked about how much different it was and how much easier it was. So the Concord Business Partnership is going to invite some of these officers from different towns, Hudson and a couple of others. Marcia was at the meeting, Marcia Rasmussen, and she pointed out that Hudson had opted to do under a program for Business Improvement District, which had been presented to the Economic Vitality Committee some months ago, and they didn't think it was applicable, but they were asking about funding for such a position. I said, well, this year's budget is almost fully baked, and so that's not even a possibility, but it's a resource issue from the point of view of the town. But their point of view is that it improves the attractiveness of Concord as a retail location, and just because it makes it easier to go through the process. And those are complaints we've heard before. At any rate, they're gonna be on this, and they're using this sustainability as a model. They said, wow, sustainability really has their stakeholders get together and they move. Of course, they also get a lot of grant money, but anyway, they're going to devote a lot of time, and they'll probably be coming to see us to discuss this further, but that was their main agenda item.
Okay, thank you.
I can just report on the Trails Committee, mostly spent their last meeting reviewing petitioner Phil Posner's warrant article about studying the Reformatory Branch Trail. They, at this point, have not taken any position on that. I would say that members generally seem very skeptical. The DEI Commission met and over Zoom this time, and had a lot of discussion about the sort of more strategic elements of what work they want to get done, priorities. No conclusions yet on that. The Municipal Light Board, they did a budget review, looks great. They also are doing rate design, and that is very difficult to really figure out how to evolve rates from their current levels to something that better reflects fixed costs that they have and the variable costs based upon the time of use. And so there's going to be a lot of, you know, further discussion before I think that we end up with a new rate approach, but it's going to be essential as electric vehicles become more prevalent. You know, renewable energy has a lot of implications in terms of cost of time of day and all.
So Matt, does that mean they're looking at that tier structure, tier 1, 2, and 3, and they might change that?
Right. So, I mean, that's how they have it now, and they do, I think, have a couple of special rates for special situations
Right.
like EVs. But they're really trying to also consider how in the future rates could better just reflect supply and demand, because there is so much of that in the electric. You know, there is 1 hour in the summer, we can't always say when it'll be, when rates are drastically higher. I mean, the cost of power is drastically higher than any other time of the year. And if people were motivated to not use power at that
Right.
time, it would save everybody a lot of money.
Right.
Because that peak dictates.
Yeah, and right
The
now, there's like an
cost.
email list and, you know, people say, please don't, but, you
Right.
know, it would
Right.
be a lot better if there was actually money involved, I think.
Right, and the other thing is, with a lot of people switching to electric vehicles, like you said, but also heat pumps.
Yeah.
So now they're spending a lot more money on electricity, but then they're going into the higher tiers. So it's like a disincentive to get the heat pumps, and yeah, I'm sure.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Won't the smart meters help with that?
So there's a lot of opportunity now because, of course, there's lots of ways in which things can be automated and remotely controlled, and, you know, there's so much that can be done.
Good.
I think there are also some cautionary tales. I don't know if you saw, like in Texas, they had rates that were directly related to the cost of power with no limits. And people were spending like $10,000 a day on electricity during a storm because they, you know, had signed up for this rate that had no limits to it.
Oh, boy.
So, you know, there are extreme circumstances, and you do need to make sure you know, take those into account. Yep.
All right, Henry?
Okay, we've heard about the Civil War monument already. The 250th anniversary is now in motion. I have recruited John Arena, who is on the appointment agenda, to be the second member of that committee. We have reviewed a list, and we're developing a strategy. We hope to have a full complement in that committee probably within 30 days to present to the board and get that thing moving. I joined in the multi-town gas leak event, and that was mostly a presentation on the use of hydrogen as a fuel, and it was a long and technical discussion that was quite interesting. I think the bottom line on it is that, at least at this point, although it has hydrogen has certain uses, and we have a company in Concord, which you know does electrolyzers of water into hydrogen. It may work for like vehicles, airplanes, but as a domestic fuel, it's just not economic. The electric cost to create it is just too high. We're going to have to get nuclear fusion to make the hydrogen before we can use it. We've heard about the library. They're closing for 2 weeks to install the shelves. The Board of Health, I listened into their meeting, and there were a couple of issues. I mean, something that dominates every meeting of the Board of Health is COVID and the COVID restrictions and the criteria that are going to be used for imposing and relaxing and waiving the mask mandates. I think that they did a very good thing, is that they actually produced a poster explaining the mask mandate situation that was distributed, and as you will find that on the doors to many retail locations. I had suggested that they do that, so it's kind of looks official. But there were a couple of items that came up that I had concern about, and they were just, I felt that they were quite uncomfortable. One was a desire, the representative of the 51 Walden Street was there to ask for some help and trying to get some idea of when they would be able to hold live performances at 51 Walden Street, which is their lifeblood. I mean, that's what they exist for. And it just didn't go well. And then there was an issue about the technology of the rice that is used in making sushi with regard to a concession that is going to, that wants to establish itself in Deborah's Natural Gourmet as part of her new establishment. And that also, it was uncomfortable and didn't really, I thought it should have gone better. And I had a thought. I know that Kerry has a number of candidates for the health director.
We do. We have about 20.
About 20. And if I were interviewing candidates for that job, one of the things I would do is get the video of that meeting and ask them to watch it, and ask them what they would have done differently. Because I think the relationship between that committee and a lot of local people is a point of contention, and it's one of those areas where I think customer service is an important component of the staffing. So I think that's, I know that Robin her hand is getting worn out, so I will say no more.
Okay, thank you. I'll be very brief. The Fiber Broadband Committee is working hard. They're very focused. They plan to have a draft to us of their report by March 1st, and they may have a public forum in April. They're also meeting with the Lake Board coming up this Wednesday morning, and they got a lot of ideas from our ARPA meeting. They were looking at the 5-year capital plan for fiber broadband, and they see that in FY 24 through 26, there's a plan to put the conduit underground. And so they're thinking with ARPA money, maybe they could start in 23 instead.
Terry, where is the conduit? Did they say the location of it?
No, it's just a capital plan with dollar amounts.
Okay.
And there's 0 slated for 23, so they're thinking, well, let's start now if we have ARPA money. So that kind of ties in when they go and see the light board this Wednesday, maybe the whole underground conduit in general. They were talking the same way that you were talking earlier, Matt, that if the street's going to be dug up anyhow, or if we have a project going on anyway, why don't we look at underground? Another idea that they had is using ARPA for seed money to create a revolving fund for fiber completion. And then another idea they had is to use the money from ARPA to construct and put in conduit on properties of the Concord Housing Authority and other underserved populations to enable broadband for those groups. And another hardworking group that we're going to be hearing a lot from is the Transportation Advisory Committee. They will be coming to our March focused meeting, and they are actively preparing for that right now. I think they will be tying in with Marcia on the making the connections as well. So that's it for my report. And we can move on to committee nominations.
John J. Arena, the third of 70 Beharrell Street, Unit 327, to the Concord 2025 Executive Committee for a term to expire on December 31st, 2025.
Second.
It's not a motion.
Just
Oh, sorry.
we'll do that next time. Okay, no appointments at this time. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we are ready for public comment. Do we have any people in the room that want to comment? What about on Zoom?
Ms. Ackerman, we've got 9 participants total, and it looks like 5 members of the public.
5 people who want to make comments?
No, 5 members of the public. So if you want to make a comment, please activate your camera or turn on your mic. I am not seeing anything.
All righty then. If we don't have any other comment from anyone, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.